Okay, this is where I usually like to start when I'm working on a design. Now, obviously I rush through these drawings. I don't try to make the drawings look so perfect or anything. This is just sketching to kind of get an idea of what I want to do. So, but my plan or the idea that I have in my head is to do a large block of foam on the bottom, a thinner block of foam on the top with some bevels, a long bevel here for a plaque or some kind of nameplate, and then the plastic dog on the top. And then you see my arrow view where I'm kind of doing that kind of thing. We got the bigger block here, the bevels, and then kind of a front view where you see the larger block, the bevel, the nameplate, and then the dog on top. So usually this is where most of my designs start. Sometimes I take a little more time in sketching them out to kind of get a little more idea of what I want, but sometimes I just throw something quick together because I'm going to end up altering it or modifying it anyways. So it's just kind of where I start. And I also want to apologize in advance. Since I'm using a lot of styrofoam, there's a lot of moving and shifting it and stuff like that. And if you have an issue with the sound of styrofoam, I do apologize in advance for this video. Alright, this one I'm starting with. I figured I'm going to do like about a 1-inch bevel on here. It's going to be 1 inch by 1 inch. So this way, this foam is 2 inches, so I have about an inch and then a bevel. I picked up a little, doggy bone from a pet store. This is really the only one I could find. I really don't like the look. I might see if I can find a different one, but this is so I have something to use for my overall sizing and mock-up. And then I figured, have it to where the tail comes right to the edge, so it's going to sit right on there like that. So I'm going to go ahead and make my bevels, and then I'm going to put it up here. I've already changed one aspect of my design. I'm not going to put the plaque on here. With this being so short, that plaque would be really weird because I'd have to really taper this really hard all the way like this just to make it, and that's going to make this thing extremely long based on the size. So I'm going to put the taper on this because this is so much thicker. I can make a nice little bevel here and make it to where I can put the plaque there. So I'm going to line it up after I make my bevels. Put this on here and allow maybe 3/4 of an inch all the way around so you have it come up. I'll probably put a little bevel on here, and then you'll see the pink foam on top of that. I'll go over where I need to, and then put the big one in the front. So that's where I'm at so far. I'll be making a couple passes with a scrap piece until I'm happy with my bevel, and then I'll actually cut the right piece. Alright, so you can see I got my nice little bevel there all the way around. And what that should do, that should allow me to put the dog and the bone on there. And that's pretty much what's going to be, and now I just got to position on top of the other piece. Okay, I got all the pieces cut, so now pretty much this will fit right on here. But, like I said, I was leaving about a little lip all the way around the whole thing. I kind of rounded off the corners, and then he'll sit up here. The bone will be right here. And then pretty much I'll get everything glued together. What I'm gonna have to do is, for these, obviously I can't just glue him down, so what I'm gonna do is where you can't see it, I'm gonna drill holes in there and put like maybe like a wire or something like that I'm gonna epoxy inside the feet and send those all the way through this styrofoam first, bend it over the bottom and before this gets glued down, so this way he can't fall off before I do all the other stuff. And now we got to put the plaque right here. Now all I did to cut this right here is I just used an electric chainsaw with a blade on it. That what I did is I take the blades, the chains that are on them, and I'll run them in the dirt a little bit to kind of dull them, so this way they don't take out big huge chips. It is a little more like, like a worn out chain, when you're trying to cut a tree. It's more of a fine powder instead of big old chips. It makes it nice to cut this stuff. And then I just take a sander, an orbital sander with just like one of these pads out where it has like little holes in it, which is really good. And I just go over it and smooth it out the best I can. Now, once I cover it in the paint and the, the stucco mix, it's going to fill all the rest of the pores to where it's all going to look good when it's done. But that's just how you get it smooth enough to where it looks nice to begin with. Working on the plaque that's going to go on the front of it. So do it this way. I'm going to round out these corners a little bit, and then I'm going to use my Dremel. I'm going to carve out each one of these letters, so this way it actually has some depth to it, and then I'll kind of feather out these edges. Alright. The reason I put the tape on there is the tape helps it, kind of like anything that you're cutting, like if you're doing, like for mica countertop or cutting a piece of wood, you put tape on there, it helps it from splintering up. That was the reason for the tape. What's this? And usually what I do after this, I'll take some sandpaper, some fine sandpaper, and I'll fold it and I'll lightly go over all these edges just to take the rough edge off, round it out a little bit, and then once I do my corners, taper it to my corners, and put it on there and paint everything all together, that'll all look like it's all part of the thing. Now obviously I'm going to try to make this stand out, so as we paint it a different color, but I'm still going to kind of give it like that age look like I do with all my props, so this way it looks like it's old and been there for a long time. Okay, now that I got the plaque made, what I wanted to do is, because it's gonna be hard to cut this down really thin, safely. So, but I also don't want it to look like a big 1-inch thick piece of styrofoam sticking off. So what I did is I traced it out where it's gonna go. Just use the Dremel with a blade on there, set the depth of where I want it. So now I can just take my plaque piece and kind of push it into it. And once I caulk all this in, it'll hold in place. Two, it makes it look like it's a much thinner, and it follows the taper where I tapered my plaque back. So this way it makes it look like it's only maybe a 1/2 of an inch or so thick instead of a big old bulky thing hanging off the front of it. So I think it makes it look a little bit better. Plus also keep it from being able to be knocked off or anything like that, because now it's kind of fixed into there. All right, getting there. Like I said, I'm probably going to find a different bone than this, and then when I do find something, I'm probably going to do the same thing for this that I did with this. I'm probably going to carve it out so this kind of sits down inside, so I can, when I caulk it, I can mold it in and make it look like it's more part of the stone, like it might have been part of the original forming of it. But kind of what I got going here. And what I do is I usually run a couple screws through these at an angle. That helps keep it from being able to move. I just put a little caulking over it. Once the caulking dries and I do my painting and everything, those will kind of just blend right in. You won't even see them. But that's what I got going so far. Alright, I think I'm at the point that I'm ready to start doing my painting. I'm going to show you how I paint and stone, make my stuff look like stone. It's a little different than what some people do, but I think it's a little more cost efficient. It goes a lot further. I could do a lot more props with one bag of that mortar. So I'm going to show you how I do the painting. You see I got the little bone hanging in his mouth here, and I got the one down here, and I got his plaque on there, so it's ready to start painting. Alright, pretty much what I just use gray latex house paint. When you deal with styrofoam, you can't use spray paints. You have to use just like a latex house paint. Now you can use spray paint after you cover it with this, but spray paint, if you for people that are maybe just now getting into this kind of thing, the solvents in the paint will melt your styrofoam. So you don't want to do that. So you just want to use a latex paint. So I'm gonna put a little latex paint in my mixing cup, add a little water to it, put it in my cheap little sprayer, use a strainer, and then I'll show you the next part. Alright, I got my paint in my cup. All I do is I just add a little water to it. I know there's an exact science to this, but I don't really follow it. Just put a little bit in there, stir it. You want it to be a little bit thinner than what it does when it comes right out of the can, but not watery, because then it's going to run all over the place and make it harder to paint your product, but your prop, plus also it'll take longer to dry. So, I mean, that's pretty good right there. All I do is just strainer. Now this is just a cheap Harbor Freight spray gun. Nothing special, nothing high tech. I mean, after all, you're only really spraying just a prop with it. You're not painting a car or anything like that with it. So these guns right here, they're cheap and they work really well. Not only that, you can feather them almost like an airbrush for, like, if you're trying to do like a fine detail area. So actually, I mean, these guns actually work really well for what they are. All right. Now, usually when I'm painting my first coat, I like to put it on super heavy. So I usually just do like close it all the way up and do like a straight like that. But then once I want to start actually painting and get good coverage, then you want to be able to fan it out like that right there. Now, all I do is just and then, like I said, I just use like a mortar mix, a grout, anything that's kind of a concrete base. And the reason I do it this way is, think about it, if you're making something that's supposed to be looking really old, concrete has a lot of imperfections and it's really old. It's not nice and smooth. It's not going to have the same consistency throughout the whole thing. So all I do is, once I get the thing heavily painted, I just Then the next step I do is I take a blower. Now the object here is not to move it, it's more or less just get rid of any excess. Mainly like down inside lettering, because you don't want it to clump up inside there. So this way when you go to do your next layer of paint, you're not closing it off. But by it sticking to the paint, you're only really blowing off the top layer that's not stuck to the paint. And to say for some reason, once that kind of dries a little bit, if it's not quite, doesn't look the way you want it, you can always add more paint to it, and then always sprinkle some more of the, the concrete mortar mix on top of it until you get the actual look and consistency you're looking for. Now you can see it's not completely dry yet, it's getting there, but I do have a few areas where I feel like I have a little bit of some inconsistencies, like right here on the ribs. I don't think I got enough on these ribs compared to like the rest of it. And then there's a couple areas down here where it looks like it's still a little, too much. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna wait for this to dry. I'll spray another coat of gray paint on it, and then when I do that other coat of gray paint, I'm just gonna, fine mist the mortar mix. I'm not gonna throw it on there as much as I was on the first count, because I'm just more or less wanting to get rid of some areas right here where it looks a little too smooth, where everything else has a lot more of a textured consistency to it. So, but overall, I mean, it came out alright for the first one. Sometimes I usually have to do 2 passes on these. The other thing I forgot to mention, that what I normally do a lot of times is I'll actually put a big tarp down, so all the excess gets on the tarp, and I can essentially keep reusing it until I completely run out. And that's how I can make that bag, last a really long time and do a lot more props. Now alright, got the second layer of dusting, I guess you can say, on it. It's a lot better. I mean, I still have some inconsistencies, but like I said, that's what you want. I got a little bit, it's a little more better on the rib cage now. You can see, I got areas you can see where it just comes off with a really nice stone look to it. It just, you know, and it looks old and aged and that kind of stuff. Now, the reason why I do it the way I do it, the way you see me do it, is anybody that follows my page and you saw the cemetery scene that I made a video of, all those fence columns, all those mausoleums, the My Beloveds, and all that stuff that you saw in that video, every bit of that was painted and done with a little over 5 gallons of gray paint and 1 bag of mortar mix. So between those two together, you know, you buy the cheap stuff. I mean, after all your only paint and props, it was probably just a pinch over $100, and I was able to do all that and make every bit of that have that stone look to it with just that right there. Working on the finished painting, and I realized after I showed how I was painting the gray on there and doing the texture, I kind of messed up. Since this is supposed to be like a plaque, that's got to be smooth. It's not supposed to look like concrete, so I just had to clean that off before it fully dried. Now what I'm doing is I'm trying to make it look like an old, you know, brass or kind of a copper kind of, you know, plaque. So what I did is I just picked up some gold. Now I wasn't able to find any gold that had any kind of metallic in it, so I mixed a little bit of the gold, a little bit of black, and just a little bit of this metallic right here to give it that little bit of that kind of that sheen to it, and then just mixed it all up until I had the look that I liked for what I think it should look like. Now it's on to doing the rest of it, the black and the greens, and kind of making it look old. Now the one thing I do right here for kind of my pre-aging is I kind of like to just take some black and just mist it, so this way you're dulling the gray. You don't want to make it obvious that you're painting. You just want to give it like a kind of a dirty look, like it's been outside for a little bit, just to be my initial, just to dull everything out a little bit. And then I'll mix some black paint with some heavy water in it to make my runs, and then after that I'll use my greens and go from there. I got the wind working with me today. I just kind of go like this with the wind. Just like that, and then the rest is going to be, we do some paint brushes and some more sprayers to finish the rest. The next part is where you're going to really want to go online, like you're not really sure the best way to kind of make something look aged, is go online, just Google tombstones, headstones, monuments, anything like that, and screenshot it and study the way the blacks and the browns and the greens are running off of certain contours and stuff like that of the structures, and that'll kind of give you an idea of what direction you want to go. You know, like you can use a picture like this one. A lot of times what I like to do is I like to take a scrap piece of material. Right now I got my black mixed, and what I like to do is I like to make sure I got my consistent really good. You really want this to practically be water, just a tint of black. So like go like this, and then you also want gravity to be your friend here. So like right, that looks pretty good. I mean, it has a little bit of a black to it. It's still watery enough to where, you know, gravity's going to let it pull it down. So you just kind of do stuff like, you know, hit like some of these contour areas first. You know, areas where, like, say if it's raining, that's where the water's going to, you know, accumulate right there, and it's just going to run down. You see where it's going to run down, it's going to drip onto here, and it's going to create like this look of where the rain is actually kind of just landed on top of this stuff and just kind of ran down into the Now I like to spray my greens with my spray gun because like I said, you can float the trigger, so it's almost like using an airbrush where I can concentrate it where I want it. As I can see, like that, so that's perfect. This way I can. I like to coat the very bottom first. I think that's area is gonna be like normally right in the grass. Alright, the next step is going to be spraying some browns on it. The browns is going to kind of give it the air where like heavy water accumulates and dirt and all that stuff. You know, kind of like, you know, like, I know this is more of like a rust, but you know, when you get like, you know, the dirt and everything accumulate, you'll get the same kind of effect. You know, so, and if you have an area where, like, say you feel like you got a little too much of the green on, like I think I got a little too much green in a couple spots, I'm just going to slightly mist a little bit of gray on it, and it'll dull that green up just a little bit, but it won't really affect my overall look. Okay, here's the finished prop. This is the location it's going to be sitting in. You can see where I got the browns. I also dry brushed a little bit of green in a few areas to kind of highlight certain sharp areas and all that. Now it might look a little dark and everything right now, but after it sits out here for a little bit, it will fade a little bit. Kind of like, so the prop I built this for Halloween last year, and it's faded quite a bit since I, you know, made this one, because it's been sitting out here. So give it a few months, it'll fade a little bit. It'll start to look a little bit better. It'll start to have a little bit more of a natural look to it, but this is kind of like the starting point for it. So hope you enjoyed this video, and thanks for watching.